going to talk about two topics today. Like, part one is about the IEEE Blockchain Initiative, and then part two is about the overview of the blockchain ecosystem. As I've given talks for the last 2 years about 45 conferences in 35 countries. I have some pretty good experience and understanding of what's happening in the blockchain ecosystem. So that's the part that's a green item you see there. So let's start. Here's the outline. I'm trying to change the slide. What's here? So this is the website for the blockchain initiative. So if you go to blockchain.ieee.org, find different menus there up here. And if you click each one of them, you will find details about the activity. In fact, each one of those things you see there is actually a committee. We have a committee on community development. As mentioned earlier, we have 32 blockchain groups all over the world, including the one in Portugal. Now, also we have 28 standards working groups. Again, all of this, you can actually go to the website, and if you click, for example, standards, if you click on it, you can see the entire list of 28 standards there, and it'll take you to the homepage of each one of the working groups, right? So then we have, we've been holding conferences every year, 2008, 18, 19, and 2020. Like in February, we did a small mini workshop on transactive energy. And moving forward, at least for this year, we might do a virtual event, virtual conference. And then coming back to publications, we have been publishing like a technical brief consisting of 4 or 5 articles. These are all free. You can actually access it. If you go to the website, click on technical briefs, you can read the 4 or 5 articles written by experts. We have educational modules. And then the blockchain initiative was launched in January 2018. So it's been 2 years now. We are actually going to phase 2 of this initiative, where we're actually requesting funding from the IEEE NIC committee to actually pursue projects. Specifically, we're looking at doing blockchain for transactive energy project. So that's the focus. We are actually working on a proposal that's being reviewed. So if that gets funded, the next 3 years, the blockchain initiative will have a focus on this project. Like we will identify do pilots in a few cities. Like we're thinking about doing one in the U.S., one in maybe in Africa, or and then maybe even Europe. So just keep checking our site, and if you want to know more about this, you can always contact me. So here's the list. We have 32 groups all over the world, and lately, the last this year, at the beginning, we are actually doing virtual events. Like last month, we did one in Spain. There were like over 35 people on the call, just like similar to what we're doing today. It was also WebEx. So now we are doing one here, right? So seems like we will still keep continuing the activity with virtual events. And now I think that's pretty much about the IEEE Blockchain Initiative. Please do go and check it out, and you can actually sign up. And so that's part 1 of my talk. And now we're going to get into the part 2 of my talk, which is the overview of the blockchain landscape. So I have, as you can see, this is the outline. And first, I start with the evolution, the hype cycle, and then blockchain classification, and then I'll go dive deep into the ecosystem, different communities within the blockchain ecosystem, and then standardization, the last part. So let's start with the evolution. So blockchain really started with this white paper published by this anonymous person, Satoshi Nakamoto, back in October 2008, and it's a peer-to-peer electronic cash. It's like a peer-to-peer network, and it's where it's used for transferring electronic cash. In this case, it's actually called Bitcoin. So it all started from there. And back then, it wasn't called blockchain. It was in his paper, in his or her paper. We still don't know who that person is. There was a term that was used called chain of blocks. Chain of blocks is actually how this terminology came about, blockchain. So that's when after the Bitcoin was launched, the actual code was launched in January 2009, and it took some time to take off, and then many other coins were released, kind of like similar to Bitcoin, but different protocols and consensus mechanisms and things like that. So that was the blockchain 1.0, like primarily cryptocurrencies. And then around late 2013, Vitalik Buterin and Gavin Wood, they actually published a white paper, and then later on a code, Ethereum, which you can program like smart contracts, where you can actually program some conditions. The transfer of this electronic money happens when certain conditions are met. Right? If this happens, then the money gets transferred to another. They call it wallet. A wallet on it's like just a physical wallet. It's a wallet and the blockchain system, blockchain. And now after that's pretty much what we call as blockchain 2.0. All these blockchains where you can actually write smart contracts, deploy a piece of code, and that includes Ethereum, Corda, Hyperledger, all of these projects that got launched after 2013 here, 15, and 2015 Linux was launched as well. And, eventually, then blockchain evolved into like 3.0, where people started exploring the use of blockchain in different vertical industries like finance, supply chain, energy, IoT, healthcare, and so forth. Identity is actually an interesting part. In fact, European Commission has a project right now called the EPSI, European Blockchain Infrastructure Services Infrastructure, where we're looking at putting identity on blockchain. Right, it's a recent project that's being pursued. So several applications based on blockchain is what we call it as blockchain 3.0. So this is like stages of evolution of blockchain. So if you look at the hype cycle, Gartner hype cycle, it's published every summer. They track the emerging technologies. Basically all new technologies go through this cycle where there's actually a lot of excitement about this new technology. We call it the innovation trigger. And then there's actually disappointment, and we can't do everything that we think it would do. And then gradually, we start realizing that it can do certain things, like it's good for this and that. And that's kind of, this is the adoption phase. So it's like excitement, it's trigger, and then disappointment. And this is more like the adoption phase of the new technology. 2014 and 15. Actually, this is, if you go back to this evolution, this is blockchain 1.0, cryptocurrencies, right? Actually, people were not even using the term blockchain back then. That's pretty much, you can see that here. Gartner hype cycle, they before 2014, they did not even track cryptocurrencies or blockchain. They started tracking cryptocurrencies in 14 and 15. And then 15 is like a gradual shift happened in the whole field, which is actually, again, if I want to go back here, you see 15 is when all these Ethereum code, Ethereum went live in 2015, R3, Linux Foundation, Hyperledger, they all got launched in 15. That's actually the shift from cryptocurrencies to blockchain that can be programmed, which is actually, you can see Gartner, in fact, you can, they actually changed the terminology starting 16. It went from cryptocurrencies to blockchain on their hype cycle, and you can see blockchain in 16, 17, and now it's now we're talking about 18, 19. Now it's moving into more like, from my perspective, it's like blockchain 3.0. Now you start seeing like, blockchain is here, but we still have like blockchain for data security, decentralized web, and then you have DAO. So these are all more like various use cases, how blockchain could be used, and these are like more like specific like security, organization, web. There's still like decentralized movement, which I will get into later, where this falls into. But there are also many applications, use cases that are not on this graph. So this is, I feel like now we are on the phase of blockchain 3.0, and especially 20. We are even here. Some of those applications, you see them here, but quite a few of the applications are actually already on here, which is what I'm going to actually talk about later on in my presentation. But now moving on to the blockchain classification. So I'll start pretty basic, and then we will get into it'll get more detail. So, and then I'll show you some use cases, so you'll kind of put things together. Talking about. So if you actually go to this website, I don't know how many of you use CoinMarketCap. So that's a website that they track all the cryptocurrencies. So if you go, this is actually a little outdated. This is from last month's data. So if you just look at the top 10 cryptocurrencies listed on CoinMarketCap, I mean, there's over 2,000 cryptocurrencies on there. So if you look at top 10, so you can actually classify them. Well, I'm taking the top 10 to see if we can actually understand how to classify those different blockchains that you see there. So the ones that I have here, like Bitcoin, XRP, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Litecoin, they're all like cryptocurrencies. Primarily, it's used for transferring, electronic cash, and they're all public blockchains. Everything you see on CoinMarketCap is, they're public blockchains. Now, the second category, this is like what I call the blockchain 1.0, primarily cryptocurrencies. Now, blockchain 2.0 are the ones where you can actually program the blockchains, right? Like the Ethereum, EOS, Tezos, at least on this top 10 list, they're all programmable blockchains, okay? Now, I think there's only 2 left, because there was like this 5 here, they're all cryptocurrencies, and we got these 3, they're like programmable blockchains. Now we got 2 left. These 2 are actually smart contracts deployed on the public blockchain. And one is actually, Tether is actually just a stable coin. It's basically, the idea is, Tether should have, cash that backs these, whatever this market cap is, which is a different story. Let's not get into that detail. There were some discussions around how much cash they really have, but that's basically a smart contract. Tether, which is stable coin, as you can see, it's $1. Usually, it's like $1 backed by a currency. In this case, it's a US dollar. And Binance Coin is actually an utility token. It's basically a token that you need to buy to use their exchange or services that they provide. So you can see, basically, you can classify the top 10 blockchains into different categories here. Basically, they're all public blockchains, as I mentioned earlier. So we have the currencies, and then you got programmable blockchains and smart contracts deployed on top of the blockchains. So that's pretty, easy to understand so far. I kind of have some notes here, which, at a very high level, the differences between these blockchains are highlighted here. Like, you can see public blockchain with the, proof of work. Now they're moving to proof of stake. That's Ethereum. Then EOS is a permission blockchain. They use a delegated proof of stake consensus protocol. These are all protocols in the parentheses. And you have Tezos. They use a consensus protocol called liquid proof of stake. So now let's try to understand what the differences are, like between public blockchain, permission blockchain, and all these different terms that you see here. So now we're going to take a broader look at the situation here. So we have to basically understand some basic terminologies. Then we can actually get a deeper understanding of these different blockchains. And we can actually understand the entire blockchain ecosystem once you understand these basic classification concepts. So ledger, as you know, ledger is basically, this is it's a computer file for recording and keeping records of transactions. Right. These are old physical ledgers like notebook, and these are like computer files, Excel file you could keep records of your transactions, which is a ledger. So in the case of let's keep it there. So ledger is basically where you keep records of transactions, right? And then in terms of blockchain, there are two types of ledgers. So all these ledgers are stored in the peer-to-peer computer network. So it could be public or private. Public means anyone actually can see the transactions. That's a public ledger. And private means only a small group can see the transactions on that ledger. Okay, that's the two types of ledgers. And validators are people who can actually approve the transactions, right? So it could be open group, like anyone can actually jump on and participate in the consensus mechanism and approve the transactions, or only a selected people can actually approve the transactions. So if you understand these two concepts like ledger and validators, you can actually understand different blockchains here. So public blockchain is actually a public ledger where anyone can see the data stored on the public blockchain, and anyone actually can participate in the process of validation process. It's public blockchain. We call it DLT as well. DLT stands for distributed ledger technology. It's a general term for it includes blockchain. And the next type is permissioned. Permissioned is actually a ledger, public ledger, but only a small group can actually, approve the transactions. That's a permission blockchain. Right? And then you have the third one is a private blockchain. It's a private ledger, right? Like for example, the folks in this meeting, we can have a ledger where only we get to see, and only few people here we actually get to decide, the validation. Approving transactions. So that's a private blockchain. So this is high level. We have three types of blockchains: public blockchain, permission blockchain, private blockchain. Now, I know this gets busy, but this helps you understand different communities within the blockchain. So if you take it a step further, a public blockchain used for cryptocurrency purposes like transfer of money, electronic digital cash, is what we call as cryptocurrency blockchains, which is the one that we talked about, like Bitcoin, Ripple, and those things that we saw on the previous slide. And we have permission blockchain and private blockchains. These are all used by consortia companies like Stellar, R3 Corda. They're all building private or permission blockchain. For example, R3 Corda, where they have a network of banks using the blockchain to settle transactions, right? So there may be a bank could have branches in multiple countries, but they want to settle instantly the transactions. They could use a blockchain. So that's what they're exploring. So that's what these things are. And then you have, if you move a step further, so you could if you can program deploy smart contracts on these blockchains, then that's what these boxes are. These are community open source projects where, like Ethereum falls under here. It's a public chain, and they have this, there's actually a token there, Ethereum, and this is actually permission blockchain, which is EOS, Cardano. They fall under permission blockchain, where you can actually program this programmable blockchains. And the bottom one, the private blockchain, which you can actually program, is basically what this box is. A consortium projects like Hyperledger. I should put Hyperledger here. They're actually building a group of companies come together and they create consortia. They build their own private blockchain. So that's what this is actually. So I think these things we will get into later on. So you can actually build decentralized projects on top of this, and also companies are offering blockchain as a service platform on top of private chain. So let's put some logos here to actually, you can see what these different components are, different communities are. So I took all these boxes we have, and I put different companies that are working on in this ecosystem. So this makes up the blockchain ecosystem. Right? Most of it falls into this category. So you got cryptocurrencies. These are public chains. Anybody can actually participate and send money. That's the purpose of this. And then you have consortia projects. All of these that you see are consortia projects primarily used by financial institutions, these ones, right? And you have consortium projects that are used for like supply chain, for example, right? That's what this is all like, general use case, private blockchains, right? And these are public blockchains, open source, community-driven open source projects like Ethereum, EOS, Cardano, NEM, Neo. All these. There's several projects here that fall under open source projects, right? And on top of this open source projects, you have the decentralization projects like dApps, DAO, Web 3.0, DeFi, and all of those. And then you also have token economy built on top of public blockchains. And there are companies building enterprise clients for using public blockchains like Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, Hyperledger, based with their clients. So you can actually communicate to the public blockchain and deploy your use cases. And you also have companies building all the cloud companies like IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu. These on China. These are U.S. companies. All these cloud companies, they started adding blockchain as a service BOSS platform to their existing cloud services, right? So that's what this is. Sorry, let me. So see, this is kind of how all of this evolved out of this. So all the top ones are primarily public blockchains, and all these things are built on top of public blockchains. And the bottom ones are private blockchain. Now, these are all private blockchain, ecosystem. So let's look at few of these. I have a slide for each one of these to understand, the ecosystem and what's happening in each one of those boxes, right? So you can see how things are evolving. Like, this is like blockchain 1.0, right? Primarily, and then this is blockchain 2.0. Both open source public blockchains, and this is also blockchain 2.0, where enterprises started looking at the use of blockchain. This is like blockchain 3.0, different applications built on top of blockchain. Right? These are different, like projects, smart contracts, tokens, clients, blockchain service platform on a private chain. These are all like applications or services built on the blockchain infrastructure. So now let's look at some of those boxes in detail, or some details and some examples, right? So you kind of get a little more deeper understanding of each one of them. So decentralized internet. This is the which actually we had on there. There's a few companies working on building a decentralized internet. So let me make it clear. To build a decentralized internet architecture, you need several components. Okay, blockchain is just one box. Blockchain actually is pretty much here. You see decentralized computing. That's the only box where blockchain comes in. But to build this entire architecture, you need decentralized storage, decentralized messaging system, domain naming system, browser. Then you can deploy the dApps, and then you deploy DAO, dApps. So what the idea is, all of these components are built in using this decentralized component architecture, which actually would enable these advantages like immutability, trust, and transparency, and it's decentralized governance. So no single authority can actually bring the internet down. For example, today certain countries actually can bring the internet down if they want to, right? So you can't do that with decentralized internet architecture. So that's why it's censorship resistant. And also, the data storage is distributed, which actually is also true for cloud services today. It's distributed. The biggest, I guess, the philosophy behind this was like no intermediaries, and as a result, it would be free or lower cost. That was the biggest, drive for this, or biggest economical benefit that people who work in the space would tell you. But in a lot of cases, it's not easy to do things for free, because businesses have to make some money, revenue to survive. So you'll see some of those use cases later on, that in some cases, even though they're using blockchain, they still have to have some fee model for you to use their services. Now let's look at dApps. So if you go to dappradar.com, you would see decentralized applications deployed on blockchain. So I know this, it's pretty small, but you can actually go to dappradar.com if you're very curious. If you look at the, you can see the users, the volume of transactions, and you can also see the type of dApp it is. And as of today, the majority of the dApps deployed on public blockchains fall in the category of gambling or games, right? There's not like, there's no one exchange here, but most of them are like games and gambling, right? There's not really a killer application yet. So let me step back and put this in perspective. So we are talking about, decentralized applications built on top of public blockchain here, right? That's what the dApps are. dApps, DAO, Web 3.0, and DeFi, all of these things are built on public blockchains. So now let's go back and look at some of the decentralization projects, like Ethereum. There are many projects are being pursued for decentralized identity, right? Small companies, startups, as well as I mentioned, European Commission is actually working on this big project called ESSIF, right? And then voting registry, all Ethereum-based projects. And you have EOS-based projects like Voice, which is similar to the Facebook, right? Everpedia, similar to Wikipedia. And then Tron, Hedera, Hashgraph, they're all working on decentralized internet. And there's also this another small ecosystem that's been evolving since last year. It's called DeFi, decentralized finance, which is, you can see it here. The definition is at the top. Basically, it's like doing lending on crypto world. For example, you bring in Ethereum. I take your Ethereum as collateral, and I give you another token that you can use, right? And you also receive interest for your collateral. So there are companies. You can see the list here. There's several companies here that are actually doing, basically finance services, financial services in the crypto world, lending, basically providing you interest rate and taking one type of currency and giving you another type of currency, cryptocurrency. So that's been actually going on since since January 2018. So it's been steadily growing. So this graph shows the Ethereum locked in DeFi, meaning people have pledged Ethereum and then taken different kinds of currencies, and that's what's happening here. So this is actually from a report that was published recently. You can check it out if you're interested. So that's DeFi. Now, those are all decentralization projects so far, right? We talked about dApps, we talked about Web3, talked about DeFi, and there are companies working on each one of these areas. Now let's talk about token economy and startups. These were also built on public blockchains. So I'm sure Many of you might have heard about this ICO, uh, initial coin offering. It's basically, it happened in 2017, started in 2017, and it actually, I think it pretty much phased out like last year, like middle of last year was kind of pretty much phased out. So this was actually a fundraising mechanism. The startups, need funding, right, to pursue their idea. So this was actually a way of startups to basically, they would write a white paper, they have a concept how they could use blockchain. In this case, they would issue tokens to build this DApp. Uh, so, for example, there were companies trying to do like Uber model, even Airbnb model on blockchain. Right? There were a few of them that I saw. So they were basically trying to create a business model, economic model using tokens and on blockchain. So then they raised money. So some of them had really good ideas. Unfortunately, there were a lot of scams. Because it's unregistered fundraising. So you don't even know who these folks are. We don't even know if they're real. So that's kind of what happened during that time. And all these governments, uh, all over the world, got concerned about this because they were raising money from anyone, and some of them ran away, disappeared right after some time. So it really that's when ICO kind of like was on the news every week. Some countries actually made it illegal, like the red ones, and some countries restricted, meaning you have to, register and all that. And some countries, you can legal fundraising by if you register yourself and basically go through the legal process. So that evolved. ICO pretty much phased out because, particularly in the U.S. SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, they started going after companies who are raising money without registering, especially from U.S. Citizens. So now that evolved into a security token industry where you actually would register the company, register your, securities sales with SEC. And there are actually some legal paths for fundraising. So like they call the crowdfunding rules like Reg D, Reg S, Reg A plus and all those. So you could use those regulations to raise money. So that's what's happening right now in the security token industry. And you can see this is the data from s2check.com. Last 2019, several companies, when the ICO phased out, like beginning of 2019, and then STO started to take off, the companies started registering, and then do the fundraising in different jurisdictions. Like it shows you U.S., Cayman Islands. So these were like top three jurisdictions used by companies fundraising. It didn't really. It was kind of taken off until this COVID-19 thing happened. Now I think pretty much all companies are on in a hibernation mode right now. So that's kind of what happened in the token economy, right? So now let's. I'll keep going back to this slide now and then, just so you can see what we are actually talking about. So we were pretty much talking about these two boxes, the decentralization projects, and then the token economy that was built on top of public blockchains, right? ICO, STO, then IEO. IEO is actually initial exchange offering, which is kind of similar to ICO. You just go through an exchange, and the exchange would help you with some compliance and all that, right? So they will do the check, like they call AML KYC check, know your customer, like who's investing, and AML is anti-money laundering. So they do all these checks to make sure you're legally compliant. So which is also similar to STO. So that's what we talked about so far, these two boxes. Now let's start getting into these areas like enterprises, right? For example, I talked about this boss. So let's go into that one. Um, so that's what the next item is. Enterprises. So enterprises started creating alliances and consortia. These are all enterprise blockchains. So basically, group of companies got together, and that's the case of Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and like Ripple was a company that started, and then they're actually trying to create a network of banks. R3 is similar story. Hyperledger, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, EEA. So these are all companies. Well, even on this slide, there's a subtle difference here. That's what the heading tells you that. So these are all blockchains, Ripple, R3, Hyperledger, right? They got launched, and they can see the year here. And these are Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. They primarily created client specs and some tools, right? They didn't really create a blockchain. They actually created specs that how to use a public blockchain for enterprise use cases. And they also built some tools around it. And these are all consortia and alliances created on different vertical areas like IoT. This is Transport Alliance. This is Mobi's automakers. And there's many more. There's like several more like construction consortia, blockchain consortia. There's one called blockchain for insurance industry. So they're all like consortia being created for different vertical use cases, right? Now let's move on to BOSS. So these are the companies which I already mentioned on that slide that we keep looking at. All these companies with cloud services, they started adding, BOSS platform as another service to their cloud infrastructure. Okay, now recently, Forbes published this list, Forbes Blockchain 50. So this is a list of 50 big companies working on blockchain. So you can see now it's becoming, we're in the adoption phase of blockchain. Like companies are started looking at it or offering services, so it's becoming mainstream. That's what you can see like this year seems like, in fact, published one last year as well and this year. So slowly we are in the phase of, getting into the adoption phase of blockchain. And let's look at governments. We looked at enterprises. Now let's look at governments using blockchain. So this map shows you various governments across the world, looking at blockchains or implementing or exploring. So they have some projects going on, right? So that you can see there's a lot of interest. And in fact, at the World Economic Forum this year, like in January, the biggest one of the big topics in the blockchain field was the CBDC, central bank digital currency. Like countries, this is about issuing, instead of printing physical cash, because printing money is an expensive process, printing and distributing and all this. So if you could actually do it virtually, digitally, then you would save a lot of money on this. Expenses could be conserved. So that's the idea of CBDC. And now, you can see the big shift happen in the field. In 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, there was a lot of pushback from the governments, and in general, there was this, blockchain is kind of like a Bitcoin used for all this, bad things and dark web and all that. But now we're talking about governments, countries actually issuing their currency on blockchain. So that's a big shift in 10 years, right? So now recently with what's going on with COVID-19 thing, we're all sitting at home. In fact, there was a project that was announced recently called MiPasa. They're basically taking data from the reliable sources like WHO, and they want to provide like a single source of, truth in this case, where people can actually go and take data from this source and do analytics on that, right? That's this project called MIPASA COVID-19 Data Project. The company that's actually heading this is called Unbounded Network in collaboration with IBM, so forth. So that's about you can see how things evolved quickly, right? In the last 10 years, it went from Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, all the way to central bank digital currency, and then governments, talking about CBDC, and enterprises now offering cloud services, BOSS, and so that's a big shift in the industry. That's why I kept mentioning this a couple times. So I feel like we are already in this phase of the Gartner hype cycle. A lot of the use cases are already here, and people are. Now, see, the thing is, blockchain is actually the horizontal technology. It goes into many, many areas. So some of them are still over here, some of them are here, right? So it's always hard to say, is blockchain, sometimes, at least last year, I remember people were having panels talking about, is blockchain going to be gone or is it still going to be here, kind of thing, right? It's hard to have a discussion like that because there's hundreds of applications, hundreds of use cases for blockchain. So, they all fall on different phases on this curve. At least some of those are already here. Now, when you're talking about adoption, when you go into the adoption phase, so standards become very important. Right? So that's what it shows you how many organizations are looking at blockchain standards. There's a lot, actually. You can see international standards organizations like IEEE, ISO, ITU, W3C, and the government standards organizations like NIST, INEDBA. NIST is in the US, INEDBA, like HC, these are all in Europe. In China, we have SAC, CSC, CICT. Then enterprise alliances and consortia. We kind of talked about this a few slides back. Like enterprises are creating EEA. EEA is basically primarily looking at how to use Ethereum, this token taxonomy framework. And then we have these alliances looking at creating standards for specific use cases, right? They focus on, for example, this box here, in IIC now, Industrial Internet Consortium. They're looking at the use of blockchain for IoT. This is transport, and also developer community like Ethereum Foundation, NEO, NEM. They're all looking at token standards. So basically, this falls into 3 different tiers, categories. Folks are working on specific standards like NEM, NEO, Ethereum. And there are enterprise alliances consortia working on industry-specific standards. Excuse me. And then you have international standards organizations like these ones are working on standards. So that's the biggest challenge here is you have to bring folks from all of these levels to work together. You really don't want 4 different or 3 different standards on the same topic, right? So that's kind of what we are trying to do. In fact, June 17th, working with the European Commission, we're doing a virtual event. Well, earlier we were thinking about doing a face-to-face, but now it's going to be a virtual event where we're actually inviting folks from all of these different organizations to talk about how to, we call it joining forces on blockchain standardization. Basically, we want to talk about how we can work together, coordinate, and harmonize the standard space, right? That's what we are doing. So bottom line, so you can see there's a lot of interest on standardizing blockchain, which is basically we are pretty much here in the blockchain adoption phase. So I think that's slide.